Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to you wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us here on the Geelong Region Soccer Show live on Facebook. And my name is Tonci Prusac and my co-host, a very warm welcome to you, Steve Curtin. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Tonci. And we've just been stocking up on prosciutto and parmesan after that fantastic chat that we got to watch on Sunday night with 6 of the best from our golden generation of Socceroos. And how are you yourself, Tonci?
Mate, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. We've been talking about it for the last 2-3 weeks, that this now is the perfect time to start addressing issues, for clubs to now start doing strategic plans. If ever there was an opportunity for the game to reset, is the word that people are talking about, it's now. And look, in the last 7 days, maybe the last week and a half, I suppose, it's just gone full throttle. Like, it has really, really gone absolutely nuts. And to be honest, I'm absolutely over the moon with the direction that things are heading. And look, I'd love to say that people have been tuning into the Geelong Region Soccer Show and our sister program, Football Out West, on a Thursday and heeding what we've been saying. But look, it's just that something is happening in Australian soccer. Something massive is happening. And I think what we saw on Sunday with the Optus Sport special that went for 2 hours and was riveting viewing, where we had 6 members of the golden generation, including Geelong's own JOSIP ZILIC, on the show, talking about change and the change that needs to be made. And another notable person that took part in that, an ex-Socceroo, the V-Bomber himself, Mark Viduka, Steve. Well, we haven't got the V-Bomber on tonight, but we've got someone just as important who actually, well, I credit his interview as the interview that has got the ball rolling.
Yeah, I think that's right, Tonci. So we're going to have MICHAEL CAIN himself, the man who flew over there to interview the V-Bomber in Zagreb. And more recently, you saw his interview go to air on Sunday with former Liverpool legend Craig Johnson, who actually lives in Newcastle, where MICHAEL himself resides. So, yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to speaking to MICHAEL very soon.
Now, there we go. There's a photo there on screen of MICHAEL CAIN. If you look at him, he bears this uncanny resemblance to Joe Allen, the cameraman from Barnsley Soccer Club. If you just sort of look at his nose and mouth or whatever, it's a very uncanny resemblance. But another person that's going to be coming on tonight as well will be JOSIP ZILIC, former North Geelong Warriors president, who's been heavily involved in the strategic planning side of things down at Alco Park in recent years. And he's actually stepped up. And was the tournament director, if you like, of the 46th annual Australian Croatian Soccer Tournament that was due to be held in Geelong. Now, it's been cancelled. It was made official over the weekend. But look, we'll get the lowdown from JOSIP, exactly what's happening and if Geelong will be hosting it next year, Steve.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Always good to get JOSIP in. He's a very good friend of the program. And after that, we're going to go all the way to Barnsley in the UK. Well, not exactly, because he's back in the country after his stint there. And we're going to speak to, who have we got there, Tonci?
And that's none other than Angus Chapman, ex-Geelong Rangers superstar teenager, who also had a stint at North Geelong. And he has completed his quarantine. He's out of quarantine. He's back in Geelong. And, mate, if kids out there, if you're an adult now listening to this program, make sure you get your kid, male or female, doesn't matter, to listen to Gus later on this hour, because he's going to tell us how this boy, teenager from Geelong, has gone all the way to the UK to play, basically sign with a championship club from England, Barnsley FC, He's going to tell us all about it. Last year, we saw the kid playing at Myers Reserve for the Rangers senior team. He'll tell us what it's like and how the coronavirus has I guess affected or slowed down his development, if at all. But some amazing guests on tonight, Steve. So it's going to be a phenomenal show. Hey.
That's going to be great. Yeah, Angus still only 16 by my calculations here. So what an opportunity at such a young age for him from a boy from the Geelong region. So that's a great discussion coming up there.
Absolutely. Now, mate, before we talk to all of our guests, I mean, it's a star-studded lineup tonight. It really is. We've got not two, we've got three guests tonight. So it's going to be awesome. Do hang around with us, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we do go any further, we must make a very, very special mention of our show's advertiser today. Tonight's episode proudly brought to you by John Aaron MP, the Honourable Member for the State Electorate of Lara. John Aaron, he can be contacted on 52753898. Now, we're going to launch into the news desk very, very quickly. But before we do that, let's sit back and we'll just there's a couple of words here from John, our main advertiser tonight.
Hi, my name is John Aaron. I'm the State Member for Lara, which covers the north of Geelong. As your elected representative, I want you to know that the Andrews government is a huge supporter of the World Game, both at state level but also at local level. I also want you to know I am here and willing to listen to any concerns you may have about our beautiful part of the world, which, by the way, has produced some brilliant players that have gone on to international stardom. Geelong is the hometown of ex-Socceroo Steve Horvat, JOSIP ZILIC, Chris Trajanovski, as well as the ex-Croatian international Joey DeLuca and current Socceroo Matty Sporanovic. My office can be contacted on 52753898 or via email at john.aaron@parliament.vic.gov.au or follow me on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter.
The above message was funded from the parliamentary budget.
We're back. Thank you for joining us. And let's now, Steve, turn to the news desk. What is happening in the news?
Yeah, first up tonight, we're going to pay tribute to Cecil Early, a Geelong soccer legend. The former Geelong Rangers president, Paul Miller, said in the Addy this week of Cecil, when they list the legends of soccer in Geelong, Cecil Early would be one of the first on the team sheet. Can you elaborate on your memories of Cecil, Tonci?
Well, personally, I didn't know the guy. I've heard of him. He definitely was a legend in his time. He played for numerous amount of clubs in the northern suburbs. As Paul Miller, former president of Geelong Rangers and a well regarded journalist for Australian Associated Press, Paul was. He's written and he said he was born in Belfast. So if he was born in Belfast, you could tell that the Irishman was a very, very tough cookie. And that's what he was known for on the field and as a coach. He left his mark playing for Geelong, Bell Park, Geelong Rangers and Corio. So he was involved with quite a fair few of those clubs. And look, if anyone actually saw the article in the Geelong Advertiser, there was a fantastic photo there of Cess with the great George Best, another legendary Northern Irishman, and they played in an exhibition game in Melbourne. So look, if anyone out there remembers the late Cess Early, do in our comments drop us your favourite memory of Cess. Maybe you played with him, maybe you played against him, or maybe he was your coach. If you do have a fond memory of Cecil, do pass it on with us. But he was known as the blood vessel, Cecil or the blood vessel. So that probably goes a lot to tell you how what sort of a character he would have been.
No doubt. Yeah, it's very important to celebrate the legends of our footballing community. So, we look forward to hearing your tales about Cecil Early and his contributions to Geelong Soccer from the Northern Irishman. Now, all A-League clubs will be waiting expectantly to hear from Football Federation Australia Chief Executive James Johnson on the roadmap for competitions when they might finish this year. And when it might start next season, when Australia's soccer governing body reveals its next short-term plan on Wednesday. That is tomorrow, Tonci.
Yeah, look, a lot's going to be happening tomorrow. We're probably the first codes to come out with the next step. The AFL's been talking about it every day, and if you're watching, some of these, they just regurgitate the same old. But look, ultimately, it's all going to depend on what the state and federal governments say, the chief health officer or wherever, blah blah blah. It's all going to filter down, no doubt. But look, at least it's going to give us a bit of an idea as to what is happening. And according to one of the articles, I think it was on the World Game today, was saying Football Federation is set to provide an update on the competition's future amid the coronavirus pandemic on Wednesday after postponing the remainder of the season indefinitely on March 24. It's unknown if a resumption date will be set in Wednesday's update, but the pressure to finalise just what will happen is growing due to multiple factors. Now, if you do go to the World Game website, JOSIP ZILIC interviews Geelong's own John Didlitzer, president of North Geelong Warriors, who's also the CEO of the Professional Footballers Association. And he's quoted saying, what the sports needs to manage is balancing these contractual situations that they have with all these players' contracts finishing on May the 31st, but also the sporting integrity of the competition. It goes for about 13 minutes, that interview with JOSIP ZILIC. And JD does say some very, very interesting and important things. But I guess all eyes will be on Football Federation Australia headquarters tomorrow to see where that happens. But look, obviously, it may provide us with a glimmer of hope as far as the elite competition is concerned. And maybe in what way, if at all, the A-League season will draw to a climax. Steve, what do you think, mate?
Yeah, it's hard to know what we're going to see tomorrow, just simply because there's not a lot of information and developments in wider society yet in terms of resuming things and easing restrictions on the way we interact with each other, and certainly things like football seem to be off the table. You just wonder if there could be an announcement perhaps on their consideration of aligning the season with the winter calendar, with the AFC calendar, with the NPL as it stands at the moment, Tonci. I'd be really excited to hear them come out and make some talk about that. We've had a lot of experts coming out and making comments surrounding that. It's something that we need to do. What do you think, Tonci?
Look, I think as far as Wednesday's concerned, I don't think a decision will be made. I don't think so. I think rather what will happen is probably a little bit of, buying a bit of time. Because really, at the end of the day, like we mentioned, FFA and AFL and NRL in this country, they're really, really going to decide something once they've been given a green light from the powers that be in this country. And at the moment, it doesn't look like that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. Regarding reform, let's call it that word, reform of football in this country, that is an interesting topic of conversation. And I reckon we may even bring that up with some of our guests later tonight, because I think it'll be very, very interesting to see what eventuates, I'd say, over the next 6 to 12 months, because I think no one solution will be found. I think rather we'll have a series of solutions, maybe over several phases, and so it will be interesting to see how that all happens. How it pans out in the next few weeks, months. Now we've got Foddy Kiprian, the FFV or Football Victoria Club Ambassador for the Geelong region. He's actually said, here we go. Cecil ran a local prison football program to help inmates during his retirement. Fantastic. Oh, I did read about that. I think it may have even been in the article itself, from memory, where he actually used to take Here we go. In his later years, Cecil began doing charity work for the disadvantaged, building homes and libraries for the underprivileged. He also took, he started a program where he went to Barnsley jail and ended up playing, taking soccer teams to play against some of the inmates there. So amazing story there, Steve. Now, Tonino Gaetano says, buying time so they don't have to deal with refunds. Are we talking about Football Victoria? Or are we talking about Football Federation Australia on that occasion? Jesse Mays, who's involved with Brisbane Roar now, Jesse, a Drysdale boy, was involved with Western United. He says, going to be an interesting day. Buying, and then he follows that up with another comment, says, buying time is my guess too, Tonci. So yeah, there you go. I think that's probably going to be the order of the day. Steve, depending on what is decided tomorrow, we'll have various connotations. It's something a little bit closer to home as far as Western United is concerned.
That's correct, Tonci. Well, with their stadium, I guess, sharing arrangements that Western United have had to make in the interim until their stadium is built and constructed. It sounds like they have been canvassing other grounds again, Whitten Oval, perhaps the showgrounds, and even Knight Stadium, with a view to playing maybe less or maybe not any games at Geelong's GMHBA Stadium. Western have been quoted as saying they're well aware that their first season playing games at GMHBA Stadium was little short of disastrous, and were attracting crowds that were concerned with disappointing numbers turning up to the bulk of the home games. And obviously, it was very difficult to make lease arrangements for stadiums when you don't know when the games will be on.
Yeah, and particularly talking about next year, the article by Michael Lynch from The Age actually goes on to say, or to reveal, that the club, Western United, is in discussion with 4 potential new landlords. The showgrounds out in, is it Ascot Vale? Is it out that way? I'm not too sure. Anyway, the Melbourne Showgrounds. Whitten Oval, obviously, where they've played one game. This is an interesting one. Werribee VFL Club. So Werribee's ground, Avalon Field or whatever it's called, Avalon Oval. And then the Melbourne Knights.
Churnside Park,
Yeah, and the Melbourne Knights is another one, which personally, out of all those 4 grounds, the Knights one would offer the most atmosphere, would offer the most, life, because of it's a football-specific ground. But it does quote Western United CEO Chris Kalavanis, who actually says, we will still play 1 or 2 games in Geelong as we are the team of the western suburbs and districts, but we do want to play 8 or 9 games elsewhere, close to a supporter base in the West. The problem we have is that we can't really negotiate anything definitive until we have more idea of what we can and can't do, and when we might be playing and other competitions. Steve, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. No mention of Ballarat in there, which is interesting, but the upside, it would be great to be able to get Javafi Rolls at an A-League game.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't that be good?
If we were to go to Knight Stadium, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else happening? Any other news happening around the traps? We were actually saying off air for at the moment, no football happening, no football action. There's a lot happening nonetheless.
There is. Just yesterday, there's been a podcast released, Football Coaches Australia Coach Professional Development Podcast. I'll put the link into our comments there so you can find it. And at the moment, there's 2 very good posts on there. One is the FFA National Coach Education Manager, Sean Douglas, speaking about rethinking grassroots football. I'd say that's a must listen for any coach in the Geelong region. And secondarily, there is, the top dog of the Socceroos, Coach Graham Arnold, has a forum that goes for, it's quite a long, lengthy one, and it's got questions from some of the best coaching brains in Australia, including Ron Smith, Gary Cole, Kat Smith, and Ian Greener, that are thrown at Arnie in that interview. And it sort of made me see Arnie in a different light to what I've seen him in previously. So we'll stick that link in there. And make sure you, where you got some downtime, have a listen to those 2, and let us know what you think.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, mate, we're going to have a little bit of a break. When we return, we're already running behind, aren't we? Behind schedule. We said that 6:15 we were going to bring our first guest on, and Michael Cain is waiting patiently in the green room. We're going to bring you on very, very shortly. But it's going to be a fantastic show, ladies and gentlemen. Do not go anywhere. We're going to be back very, very shortly, and until then, go grab yourself a coffee, or we'll be back in like 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Geelong Region Soccer Show. Your hosts tonight, Tonci, Prusac, and Steve Curtin. Steve, well, our next guest, I'll let you introduce him. He's ready to come on.
It is, and we've got journalist. You might hear him around Channel 10. You might have heard him on interviews with Mark Viduka and Craig Johnson. And the man, of course, I'm talking about here is Michael Cain. Hello to you, Michael. How do we find you this evening?
Really good, guys. It's great to be on your show. I'm actually on my way home, halfway to Newcastle. I work in Sydney, but so I pulled over in Gosford, which is about halfway to Newcastle. So I'm in a service station. I'm actually in my car, so I'm not a desperate journalist that's still work and living out of his car or anything like that. I'm just on my way home.
Good evening, Michael. How are you, my friend?
Great, thanks.
We're going to say, we know you're in New South Wales. We're going to say now, we know there's a lockdown, but it looks like there's a power failure as well. We can just see those pearly whites of yours, and that's about it. But no, I'm only joking. I'm only joking there. Michael, when you went over to Croatia, which was a self-funded trip to do an interview with Mark Viduka, which was an amazing interview. Simply because he's so elusive. We don't get a chance to see the V-Bomber much these days. And in many ways, he's often regarded as the forgotten Socceroo. But could you have envisaged that once it was released and out on ESPN, that it would have made such massive, massive waves? And really, I attribute that interview to opening up a whole Pandora's box of debate and discussion about the state of Australian football.
Yeah, I think it's given a lot of journalists a lot of fodder in a time when there's absolutely no sport on, no football on, especially. Look, I did actually expect it to be as big as what it got, mainly because I knew what he said, and it was an incredible interview. And in fact, I mean, when I went over there, I hadn't teed it up with ESPN or anyone for that matter. It was really I've gone over there really in hope that he'd give us a good interview. It took a lot of negotiation with him. It was Ron Smith that actually passed me on his number, and I gave him a call. So when I went over there, he's more or less sort of said to me, he said, well, if you've come all this way, then I'm going to give you some good grabs, and he did. So when I came back, it was a case of I actually had to try. I mean, I did this in early December last year, so I'd been sitting on this bit of gold for close to 3 months, and you'd be surprised at how hard it was to actually get this on air somewhere, because I went to SBS, I went to Fox Sports, I went to a few places, and a lot of them weren't interested in showing it. And I say that mainly because I think I put it down to the fact that the game is in such a sort of, it's at a crossroads, as we all know, in Australia. And places like Fox Sports, which, as you know, are trying to sort of get away from football in regards to the broadcast rights, they they were sort of loath to sort of want to do anything with it because it would probably, a lot of these journalists, a lot of these presenters are fighting for their lives at Fox Sports. And another 25 left last week, got shown the door last week. And so it was a case of we don't want to sort of make us look any worse than what our department is at the moment. So when SBS took it on board, it was a godsend, and they knew how big it was going to be, and it certainly was that.
Now, mate, sorry, Steve.
Hello.
I think we just lost Steve. There he is. Steve's back.
Yeah, sorry. I was just asking, what was it like over there preparing the day before? Did you find out a lot about Mark's personal life, what it's like living in Zagreb for him?
Yeah, look, I mean, I had 3 days to do this. It was in my own time. And when I got over there, it was like, I did an interview with JOSIP ZILIC, which again, it's something I'm putting that together as well at the moment. So I had like a couple of days up my sleeve before I interviewed Mark on the Monday, and so I had the day before. It was like a rest day. The cameraman we shot all over Zagreb for overlay and all that sort of stuff. So I gave Mark a call on the Sunday to see whether I called him because I'd never met him in person. I'd only spoke to him over the phone, and I called him. I said, "Listen, do you mind if I come, to your cafe and have a chat and get to meet you, because I'd really want to know a little bit about you, and we can sort of go over what we're going to do the next day." And he said, "Sure, I'm working in my cafe, and we can have a coffee." I said, "Oh, great." So when I got there, it was about 10:30 in the morning, and I met his wife Ivana and two of his three boys that live with him over there. And that 1 hour, I expected it to go for 1 hour talking, and actually went for 6 hours. I sat in his cafe from 10:30 through to probably about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we spoke about so many different things. And a lot of the stuff that he said in that interview, he actually said the day before. And it's sort of conversation, but the whole time I'm sort of thinking, geez, by the end of it, I actually said, "Are you going to say any of this stuff tomorrow?" And he said, "Well, Michael, if you want me to." And I went, "I'd love you to." And he was true to his word, and he was just, it was just an incredible afternoon. I think that the day before really set up what was about to happen the next day, because I don't think if I'd have met the guy and sort of got him cold, I don't think he would have given us that sort of interview. And I think in this day and age where we're doing, because we have to, with all this, COVID-19 going around, we have to do a lot of interviews via Skype and Zoom and all that sort of stuff. It shows that, how much more you can get out of a person when you meet them in person and have a little bit of time to get to know them. And it gives them that relaxed, confidence to want to talk. But you could tell he had a lot on his chest, and he certainly got a lot off. And he actually said to me at the after it, he said, "Look, did I give you enough scoops?" And I said, "Mark, I thought I was in an ice cream parlor." He just gave and gave.
Now, the question that everyone wants to know firstly is, Mark Viduka make a mean coffee?
He actually is. He is quite good at making coffee. Look, it was just incredible. He made me about 6 coffees, actually. It was the day went that long, but it was, like, that day we were sort of sitting there, and he was telling us some stuff that even I didn't even get to ask in the interview, like little things like growing up, and little quirky things, like even he was talking about the first thing I mentioned. I said, I bet you get asked a lot about the 4 goals you scored against Liverpool. And he said, "Well, actually, yeah, I do. But to be honest, the best part of that was what happened the night before." And I went, "What do you mean? What happened the night before?" And he said, "Well," leading into that game, we were playing really bad, and David O'Leary, the manager at the time, decided, to put us in a motel, even though it was a home game in Leeds, and it was an early start. It was around about 11 a.m. start in Leeds on the next day. So he put us up in a motel in Leeds, and the problem was it was cracker night in England, so there was fireworks and explosions going off everywhere. He said, "Michael, my wife Ivana was calling me every 5 minutes on my phone, because you got to remember she was brought up in the Croatian Civil War."
Yeah. Mm.
So she was having flashbacks of hearing bombs and explosions, and she was really worried, and so she was crying and calling me all night. He said, "Michael, I didn't get a wink of sleep before that game. And I thought, shit, like you've gone out, without, with the eyeballs hanging out of your head and scored 4 goals against arguably one of the greatest clubs in English history and scored 4 goals. Like how great would you have gone had you have got a full night's sleep?
Yeah. Well, all jokes aside about the coffee, but like that's a really interesting thing that he was so upfront with you. He just met you the day before. You spent 6 hours, of course, so you got to know each other really well. But one of the questions in the interview you posed to Mark Viduka was, "Do you like journalists?" And he sort of cracked up a bit about that. And obviously, anyone who's listened to Mark Viduka or known him personally, or a really good book was The Away Game by Matthew Hall. That was written, I think, just after the World Cup in 2006, where Matthew Hall went abroad and spoke to all these Socceroos. And in it really shows how much under pressure he was, whether as a 17-year-old playing National Soccer League, mind you, he was Player of the Year, then going to Croatia, then going to Celtic, going to England. You obviously said you built a rapport with him, but did you find him very, very open throughout, or was he guarded at times? Or
But surprisingly, yes. I even when I was calling him on the phone from Australia to Croatia just to interview, I was surprised. It's almost like you warm him up. The more he talks, the more he wants to talk. The more easy it is for him, and when I mean. He's been burnt by a lot of journalists in his time, so he's very wary of who he talks to. And to be honest, he didn't know me from a bar of soap, so he put a lot of trust in Ron Smith, who spoke to him to say, look, this bloke's a good bloke, you need to trust him. So in a way, I sort of went over as a clean skin. I had nothing. He had nothing on me. So when I got there and he started talking, it was almost like he just we just got on like a house on fire, and when he talks about hating journalists, you got to remember, like, this is a bloke that never really liked the limelight. He just wanted to get out there and do his talking on the field, and that's what he did. Even to the point where I sort of said to him, well, look, like even when Hiddink asked you to be the Socceroo's captain, that wouldn't have been easy for you, because being a captain, it is added responsibility, like talks and being in front of the media. It's almost like putting yourself in the media more, which is what you didn't like. He said, absolutely. He said, he goes, and he, like he said in that interview, he would have been quite happy not to have been the captain, but it's a great honour and he was never going to turn it back. But I think when a person's put in that position, he's going to give his all, and I think the more that he's getting in the media, and as you know, he was in the on a Facebook chat live the other night, and so it's almost like it's opened him up to do more things. And the funny thing, this is another thing too. I've never told anyone, was that after I came back, I got approached by a production company who said, look, if you could get him to do a documentary, on a bigger scale documentary, we'd love to do something like the Maradona documentary that was out last year. How good would that be? And I said, well, look, I can ask him. I'll see. So when I called him up, he laughed at the idea and he said, oh yeah, probably not yet. He said, but believe it or not, he said, do you remember that movie Escape to Victory? With Sylvester Stallone, funny enough, Michael Caine, Pele was in it. It was a story about a Nazi war camp where the prisoners escaped, and they escaped at the end of the film after playing a game of football against the Nazi prison officers. He said, believe it or not, a crazy Croatian movie producer in Croatia has actually approached me to be the coach in the remake, the Croatian remake.
No way.
And I went, gee, like, Mark, this is someone that shied away from the limelight, and here you are getting approached to even contemplate doing a movie role. It's just out of this world, There's so many good stories to come out of that. Even getting back to that day before, we were sitting at the cafe, and a fellow came into the cafe, and this is how Croatia's like. It's almost like you're only a phone call away from people. This fellow came in and he introduced me, and he said, see that guy? I said, yeah. He said, he's Goran Ivanisevic's personal trainer. He owns the gym in Zagreb. And he said, so whenever Goran's back in the country, he trains him. And I said, wow, So he introduced me to him, and he, went and had a coffee. And 5 minutes later, another person turned up, and he said, mate, he said, this is another Aussie, half Croatian. And I said, what are you here for, mate? He said, well, my daughter is a tennis player, and I've brought her over to Croatia to get some good tennis coaching because he's a Croatian tennis coach. He's a bit of a legend. He used to coach Boris Becker. He coached the German national team to a Davis Cup win years ago. So he's a real, legendary tennis coach. So I've come over. I brought my daughter over to get coached by him. So anyway, I said, wow, that's a great story. And Mark said, so how's she going? He said, well, believe it or not, she's actually always injured. She's breaking down all the time and all that sort of stuff. And Mark said, well, maybe he's just, flogging her on the tennis court. Maybe, he's doing the old ways of how he coached Boris. And maybe she needs a new set of eyes. And he went, well, yeah, maybe. So he said, look, the guy that's getting the coffee, that's getting served by my wife in there, he's actually Goran Ivanisovic's coach. And he went, wow, he's coaching the world number one at the moment, Djokovic. Yeah. He says, well, believe it or not, he said he's actually got he does an academy for kids as well. He said, maybe when he comes out, we'll have a talk and maybe we can marry it all up. Yeah, would you? Yeah. So anyway, the guy comes out, explains it to him. And guys, within 2 minutes, we're FaceTiming Goran Ivanisevic at this. And I'm like, this is a surreal moment. Like, one, I couldn't believe I'm here talking to Mark Viduka, about everything. And now we're talking to Goran Ivanisevic. And that's sort of the way Croatia is. And I said, mate, you're probably a phone call away from being in politics here. And he said, well, actually, my three sons actually go to school with the president's sons. So
there you go. Well, someone did say on Sunday night maybe he should be the new president of FFA, or at least the CEO. So maybe there is something there. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you have tuned in, you are watching the Geelong Region Soccer Show, not the tennis show or anything like that. But some great stories there. Now we've got Barbaros John Cara, Big Barb, who's behind the Masters League here in Geelong. He's saying, why did Visual, but he corrects himself later and says, why did Viduka move to Zagreb? Did you ask him that? That's an interesting one. Obviously, his wife's from Zagreb, but why did he end up moving over there?
Yeah, I think he just, I know, and this was the thing, was that over the years, and this is why it was great to track him down, was that a lot of people didn't really know where he was living. Some people thought he was still living in Melbourne, and he was sort of back and forth a little bit for a while, and he decided, moving back to Croatia. I think in Croatia, I think everyone leaves him alone, and I think he was just happy to blend in, and he loves the town. And to be honest, I'd never been to Croatia before, and in only the 3 days I was there, I absolutely love Zagreb. I think, I could live there. It's such a beautiful town, so much history. So I think he was just at ease with living in the in the town where his parents grew up, or his dad grew up, and bought the cafe, and it's just living the quiet life. And to be honest, I think by the end of his career, he was just really tired, tired of football. He still loved football, but incredibly, like when I was there, the derby between Zagreb and Split was on the night before, so I went to watch that, and I sort of called him up and said, are you going to that game? And, thinking, a former player would go and watch Dinamo play. And he went, no, not interested. And I went, oh, okay. So when I got there, I said, he actually said, how'd it go? What was the score? I went, 1-1. I said, what, you didn't find out? He went, no, to be honest, I didn't really care. He said, to be honest, a few years ago, he said the World Cup final could have been played outside my bedroom window and I wouldn't give a shit.
Huh.
And I thought, wow, this is a guy that, devotes his life. But you got to remember, he sort of mentioned to me, he said, look, being a professional footballer in Europe, it's almost like you're a prisoner and you're going from one prison to another, because when you're in a club, he said, they tell you where to sleep, what to eat, what time you to get up, where you go. You are really trapped in there, because they're paying you a lot of money. You have to do what they have to do. So you're going from one town to another, one country to another, one club to another, and you got to start all over again. And you don't really get many friends outside of that compound. And I think by the end of it, he was just ready to just be tucked away and just say, look, I'm done with football for a while. I get the feeling he wants to be involved with it again, especially with after the interview, and even recently with that Facebook chat live the other night. You know, it's almost like he's got that little bit of hunger. And he actually said, and this is something that wasn't in the interview, he said, I've got all my coaching, certificates. He said, I wouldn't be, if the chance arose, I'd love to come back and coach in the A-League. Wouldn't that be a massive coup?
First step, though, he has to coach a prison team in a film. Steve, you wanted to ask Michael something.
Now, Michael, yourself coming back down to earth after that and living your life that you do in Newcastle, similar city to Geelong perhaps, what's your perception of the domestic game here, the A-League and the competitions below it, and where do you think we can go from here with it all after this interview sparked such great discussion lately?
Geez, how long have we got for this? Look, I can go by, like, I know you're gonna sort of raise your eyebrows, but I don't actually watch a lot of A-League, and it's not because of I don't want to. It's more because of my work with Channel 10. Like I'm the main reporter for the NRL, the rugby league, so I have to have my head around that all the time, and I try to watch as much football as I possibly can, A-League included. But I probably watch more Newcastle Jets than anyone else. And the thing with the Newcastle Jets, and it's probably a good, for new licenses and franchisees that come into the league, they're probably a good sort of gauge on how to run a club, in the sense that they're in a town where rugby league is very very strong in that area, but there's also a big sense of football in the Hunter as well. But you'll find that a lot of people that are rugby league supporters will still go on to the A-League and watch the Jets, where that wouldn't happen in a lot of other cities. You'll find that, especially in Sydney, a rugby league supporter would not go and watch Sydney FC or the Wanderers.
Or even here in Geelong with Western United. You won't get too many AFL fans going along.
That's the thing, but it's almost like what Newcastle has. It's embodied to the point where people go to watch the Jets not because they might be massive football fans, but because they're representing their city on a national.
Yep.
So they're very proud of the fact that we don't care whether we don't like the game. We're going to go and watch. It's like the supercars, the V8 supercars that have around in Newcastle, and it's very successful. I think just as many people go to that as in the 3 days as what they goes to Bathurst. And it's not because the whole place is full of redheads. It's because people love a good event. And they'll support that event because they're proud of the fact that event is in Newcastle. So I've spoken to some of the people that got the MacArthur FC franchise up and running, and I sort of said, what you guys have got to do, like, not only have you got to get your people that actually love football to come along to watch, but you've also got to entrap that, listen, you might not like soccer, but we're representing you guys on a national level. That's why you need to come and watch us. And I think that's important because, again, you're always going to have your rusted on football fans, but if you can attract that other sort of wave of support, the sort of Johnny come latelys, or sort of that's a good thing, because again it gets people to the game. And the fact that there's obviously so many juniors in Australia, a lot of their parents might not like football, but they'll drag them along because, hey, we want to go and watch the A-League, and that's hopefully what can happen in some of these areas.
And I guess that's a lesson that we've learned down here in Geelong with Western United. It really struggled from the get-go to engage the local population down here, even though football's quite strong. It was one of the fastest growing areas in Australia as far as participation figures go. Not too many regional towns have got their own soccer show. We've got our own soccer shows, isn't that right, Steve? But Western United, right from the start, it didn't capture that it was Western Victoria. It wasn't Geelong. And Geelong people are very parochial. And I think JOSIP ZILIC, who's our next guest, he said, I love living in Newcastle because of that, because of what you said. A lot of these regional towns are very parochial, Geelong AFL is the same. A lot of people don't probably support Geelong because they really like Geelong. It's that us against them type of attitude. And, you know, a lot of people support that because it is that parochialism. Is that the way forward for Australian football? Do we need to bring back some form of tribalism, if it ever existed, in the A-League? I know that's what they tried to do early in the piece, but did it work? Not really, hey?
I think a couple of things. Look, I mean, obviously we got a lot to support football in this country, and the thing is, too, you walk around, you see kids all with Barcelona shirts on and Liverpool shirts on and overseas shirts, but in Sydney, and you don't really see too many A-League shirts. Why is that? You know what I mean? It's obviously we've got so many people that love the game, but we've got to transfer the love for it for the A-League. And I mean, talking about relegation, promotion, and all that sort of stuff, I get that, and it's important. But you sort of think to yourself, like, just say we've got, you know, still got one team in Perth and one team in Adelaide, and all of a sudden those two teams get relegated into the second division, and you have an Eastern Seaboard type of top division. In this day and age where you need sponsorship, it's like a lifeblood. And again, and it's a small pie, because you've got to remember we've got 4 different football codes in the one country, which is it doesn't happen. I don't think it happens anywhere else in the world. So, and they're all after that bit of corporate dollar. It's important for the top league to be a national competition to get that. And that's the worry you have when you got relegation promotion. If you haven't got enough teams in the West and, say, South Australia as well, you could fall into an old NSL where it's like really the Eastern Seaboard being played. I think the tribalism is so important. And as we know, the state leagues, it's almost like the FFA Cup has sparked some sort of interest within. And it's almost like people talk about how do you fix things. I think we've got to start looking at our strengths. And I know you had a journalist on last week, David, Davidovic, who mentioned that one of the best moments was seeing the FFA Cup, the rise of the FFA Cup. We need to build on that. We need to build on that somehow, because that's a success. We've got to look at what's working, not what's not working. We've got to look at what's working. And I know in the state leagues in New South Wales, I know like the clubs like Apia and Marconi, those traditional clubs, they're great, but there needs to be a lot of money put into some of these clubs to get them up to speed, because again, at the end of the day, you don't want a second-rate product, because you're going up against the NRL and the AFL and rugby union, which are top marketed products. So you don't want to sort of go backwards in that form. So it's a tough one. And this is the thing, is that with this COVID-19, it's almost like this is the time where FFA should be looking at what are we doing, because at the moment I think they've stood down most of their staff.
Yeah.
They should be actually like having think tanks now going, okay, where do we reset? Because the Fox Sports, as I mentioned before, they want out of this deal, and the separation of the clubs between the FFA and the A-League clubs, it hasn't really happened yet. The FFA is still running it, and the reason for that is because there's a clause in the contract, because if the FFA give the baby wholly and solely to the clubs, then Fox Sports can say, well, we need a new contract, and that's their out. And the FFA know it, and the clubs know it, and that's why the FFA are seen to be still running the show, but really no one's running the show. There needs to be that one thing that needs to happen. There needs to be a body in between, just like in England. The English FA run the international teams. The Premier League are run by a separate entity. We need that separate entity, because it's a rudderless ship at the moment. The FFA are saying they're running it, but really they're just holding it so Fox Sports won't walk away.
Now, Michael,
Now,
unfortunately,
Michael,
sorry, Steve. One last question, because
Tonci.
we're going to have to leave it there. There's a signal from the substitutes bench. You're about to be dragged, Michael. But before that happens, Steve has got one last question.
Sure.
Oh, it's just a question coming from Jesse Mays. He says, do you have any more projects in the works?
Yeah. Look, I've got, as I mentioned before, I've got JOSIP ZILIC, who, when I went over to Croatia, I thought, well, I'll get him in the can as well. That'll be I wanted to ask whether he had any regrets in regards to pledging his allegiance to Croatia. I mean, this is a guy who went on and played, 103 times. I think he's the third most capped Croatian player. And he doesn't have any regrets, and because you remember he was very similar to Viduka in a way, because he went through the AIS. In fact, Ron Smith names him as in the top 3 of the players that he coached. And when you think, of all the coaches all the players from that golden generation, and JOSIP ZILIC is in the top 3, that's how highly he's regarded from Ron Smith. The one person I'd love to get, and I'm sort of trying to reach out to, but she's still playing at the moment, is Lisa Devanna. I think she's got a few tales to tell, especially what's happening with the Matildas at the moment. She'd be a great get. I'm after people that you don't usually get.
Yeah.
Peter Wilson, the 1974 Socceroo captain, who's living in Wollongong practically in a hut in a hill somewhere in Wollongong. He's reclusive. He's more reclusive than Mark Viduka. Hasn't spoken practically since the early 80s to anyone in the media. He'd be a great get. And so there's things that I like doing things where people don't usually see. And there's a few people out there that I'd still love to get.
Mate, we hadn't even touched on the Craig Johnston interview, and that was a fantastic interview. A really interesting suggestion that he had a big bash of cricket, of soccer, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to touch on that. But how can people listen or watch that interview with Craig Johnston?
Yeah, look, if you could log on to 10 Daily, which is 10daily.com.au, and it's front and center on that. But it's a 13-minute interview. It's we talk about even going back to when he was playing for Liverpool in the Hazel disaster, 39 people dead. We talk about obviously the FFA Cup. Even the early days. I mean, there's a nice little story where, and I'll be quick. He was a professional photographer for Getty's, and he was on the actual PGA tour. So he's taken pictures of people like Tiger Woods and Jason Day and all that. And he got invited to a celebrity golf day in Florida. So he turns up with his clubs, and Tiger Woods comes up to him and says, "Excuse me, you're Craig the photographer, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you were playing with us. You were a celebrity." And Craig said, "Yeah, I think I played a little bit of soccer in my time."
Well, on that note, and we've got one viewer who said MICHAEL CAIN needs his own show on Optus. Righto, Prusac, great comment there. I could
Richard Bayless a call.
Yeah, I concur with that. Well, look, we had Dave Davutovic on last week, who's looking at new projects. We've got MICHAEL CAIN on this week as well, who is looking at new projects. So you never know. Optus Sport might be listening. What's his name? Trevor Bayless, is it? Might be listening. Richard Bayless, sorry. Trevor Bayless is a cricketer, wasn't he? Yeah. Anyway, on that note, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. We'll let you get back on the road. Hopefully it's a safe trip from home. But once again, thank you very much for joining us. It was an absolutely awesome chat to you. We've gone more than half an hour, so we're probably one of our longest running guests. So we really thank you from the bottom of our heart.
No worries. It's a pleasure being on your show, guys, and good luck in the future.
Thanks, Michael.
That was well, geez, that was a great chat, and geez, you had a lot to talk about. Really riveting stuff. Now, Steve, we're going to bring our next guest on. We're not going to even have a break. We're just going to go straight through. And he's been patiently waiting, and now he's going to come on and join us. JOSIP ZILIC, there he is, the man, the legend. How are you, JOSIP?
Fantastic. How are you, gentlemen?
Very good, mate.
Very good,
Well,
thanks.
Thank you for waiting patiently in the green room. We've also got Angus Chapman there waiting patiently. He'll be joining us.
I could have listened to that all night. That was great. Wasn't
it fantastic? Now, JOSIP, you've been behind the scenes. You're an ex-president of North Geelong Warriors, but everyone here in Geelong knows you. You're a man who's been heavily involved in the football side of things. You've even received a Viva Energy Club Legend Award in the past. But mate, you've been involved in recent years on a strategic level with North Geelong and football in the northern suburbs. Before we get on to the real reason we've called you on here, what's your take on this current situation with the coronavirus and the opportunity that presents itself to football?
Yeah, look, I was singing from the same hymn book as most others that are currently voicing their opinion and their thoughts on things. If the powers that be have some level of great interest of the sport and the people behind the sport, they'll be choosing this time to do conversations like this between themselves and using it to plan how they're going to work their governance going forward, because it's a major bugbear for many people. How they're going to reduce the overheads that currently constrain things and create fees that are through the roof and make things out of reach for a lot of people. How they can invest in their technical departments and the capabilities of players, coaches, referees, and how they can fix up talent ID to start looking for those golden nuggets in there and turn them into superstars. I mean, we've got one coming up soon, Angus Chapman, and I'm waiting to hear his points of view about his experiences over in the UK, and hopefully he returns to exploit his wares over there real soon. But along those lines, gentlemen.
Now, Josip, tell us a bit about the situation with the cancellation of the Croatian Soccer Tournament. It was to be held this October. Everyone looking forward to it in Geelong. Will we be able to host that next year instead, or is there a lot more to it than that?
Look, it's not as simple as just passing over to the following year. It's an unprecedented situation. The annual Croatian Soccer Tournament has been going 46 years straight, so it hasn't been interrupted until this situation, and it's a global pandemic that's put the handbrake on it. So we've been working closely with the Croatian Soccer Association to give us a way forward. Right now, what we have to do is sit idly by and wait for the conversation to occur between clubs to ensure that they'd be happy to see us go straight to 21. And so respectfully, all the member clubs, which there are 27 member clubs around Australia and New Zealand that form part of the association. So respectfully, they will be going to those boards to make sure that they're happy with that process and have a vote on that process. It's not our say. We're waiting eagerly. We're well prepared. Our major stakeholders in the City of Greater Geelong, Lara United Soccer Club, the state government, the Pony Club, and the Friends of Alco Park. We've all been working side by side to plan this event for Geelong, which is it's a massive coup for Geelong. It's 8 to 10,000 visitors over a 4-day period. 27 clubs that bring 60 teams to the fray, ranging from women's, NPL level, the state league level, masters and veterans leagues. It's a lot of fun and football. There's festival atmosphere. There's great food, and you know those that talk about the famed Sakita meets Chavapi rolls. Well, they'll be going out by the barrel load.
Now we're seeing some footage here of well, we just had some footage of I think it was the Gold Coast tournament. And now we've got some footage
that one there is
of the Dandenong City last year. Now this is all. This is probably gives an insight just how massive this event is. This is after the grand final on the Sunday night. This is a massive call or Croatian dance, as they circle dance as they have it. And there's the thing that really I take out of this is the fact that so many younger generation, third generation, second generation, involved, but it attracts so many people, not just obviously for the football side of things, but there's the cultural element, but there's also the big tourism dollars that gets fed into the city. So, hopefully Geelong will be able to host it next year. But there were other clubs as well, or other football clubs as well in the past, and also this year that were going to benefit out of North Geelong hosting this tournament, Joe.
Yeah, look, we've been working closely with Lara United about using the pitches up there and their club rooms, and Paul Grisbeck and the team have been very hospitable in discussions and planning with us. So it was a case of where we'd get them on board in a partner type situation, and whatever we can do to help them, and vice versa with regards to them providing the facilities to us. So and our invitations went out to the broader community as well to give them a notice about this coming on board. The way we see this tournament is not just the fact of displaying the Croatian cultural aspects of our people, our community, and as well as our sporting clubs, but we're blessed with regards to our volunteers. I'm going to say a number that a lot of people might raise their eyebrows on, but we managed to register just short of 300 volunteers to come and put their hands up to work for this tournament. Now, when you think about a 4-day tournament that runs from 9 a.m. to about 1 a.m. each day, there's a lot of hands on deck that are required. We were overwhelmed with the support by the people, and it's a fantastic display of the passion that people have for their football clubs. And what we were hoping to do is to try and initiate that spark within people that come along from the region and have a look at how this comes together. Yes, this is a grander scale things. It does not every tournament has to be as big as this, and there is the the country championships that you could say there's. I think the estimations from my last involvement in the strategic planning in the city of Greater Geelong was 4,000 to 6,000 visitors. So it's in that vicinity, right? But if you wanted to be a club that invites certain clubs for whatever reason, whether it's anniversary celebrations, you could lay your eyes on what goes on here and scale up and down as needed. And we were hoping to be that sort of that benchmark to display to people how things can come together. And if people needed advice and help how things came together, we'd have a handbook ready to go, and a handbook that we'd be ready to pass on to whoever the next host is as well. So it wasn't just about let's just host an event and see how we can bring the massive amount of people together. It's also a strategy behind it, and so that we can create a model that we can use for the benefit of all football clubs.
Now, we've got a couple of comments happening here. We've got Tommy Grassick saying, "Great show, boys." Craig Filer, who's your fellow coach out there at the North Geelong Warriors under 16.
Yeah, the gaffer.
He's saying, "Gets everywhere, this bloke." I think he's talking about you, obviously. Good old Craig.
He's just jealous.
Speaking of Craig, make sure to be watching the Football Out West show this Thursday at 7 p.m. on the Football Out West News. Craig Filer and myself will be hosting another massive show when we had Željko Kalac on there last week. Geez, that was a hard-hitting show. Lisa Brooks from Geelong Rangers. Wouldn't it be great to have the Country Championships 2021 and the Croatian Cup highlighting Geelong for soccer? That's a good point she makes. The Country Championships will be held in 2021 after they were cancelled, and we had Pete Bradley on last week telling us all about it. And look, that's going to be held at the Geelong Soccer Club, who are going to have 4 pitches. That's going to be also held at the Geelong Rangers Soccer Club, 3 fantastic grounds. And it's great to see the northern suburbs, JOSIP, who have been neglected in many, many ways. But at the same time, and our advertiser tonight, John Aaron, who's worked so tirelessly to get football, at least in the northern suburbs, recognised. And, you've been involved in a lot of that strategic planning and talking to councillors Grisbeck and Anthony Aiken about the possibilities of even regional facilities.
Oh God, John, without doubt, has along with our councillors in Eddie Contal, Anthony Aitken, and Kylie Grisbeck, have been phenomenal in the way they support the football in the north, but in Geelong in general. One thing that really warmed my heart in recent times was seeing Eddie and Kylie go for a visit down to the Ballarat facility to check it all out, because for many years, and I think Eddie's ears are pretty sore for me going on about it, was to go down there, have a look, and see what it's all about, so we can try and create something over here in our neck of the woods. And I was delighted to see that the follow-up occurred, and there looks to be some sort of strategic planning project to go ahead and investigate that. And God willing that we all come out of this pandemic with unscathed, and we can progress with those sorts of plans. But people like that, along with John Aaron's phenomenal support, not just behind our club but behind football in general, will give us that support, that foundational support, that we know that if we have an idea that has some thought process behind it, that benefits the masses, that they'll come to the party. They'll want to be there with us.
Steve?
Sorry, I missed some of that last question, but always a pleasure to have you on the show, Josip. I've got no doubt that that big groundswell of support of people volunteering for that Croatian tournament that was to be is standing the North Geelong club in good stead during the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's terrible that this has occurred, and that was the forefront of our thought behind the cancellation and reaching out to the Soccer Association to put the brakes on, because we know that there's plenty of people going to be doing it hard, and if they haven't already, then maybe they'll be approaching some hard times. And the last thing they want to be worried about is whether or not they can cancel a flight or an accommodation around that. But more appropriately, and to locally, I could see that the engagement between the club and our members and supporters is still there. You got Joey Dizlic posting up some sort of training regime every few days just to keep the players activated and keep their minds entertained as well. And you can see the comments flowing in from our members and supporters there that they genuinely want to be involved. And even when the notice went out of the cancellation, the outpouring of support, not just from our local members and supporters, but also from nationally, people jumping on and literally trying to tell the association, let's just hold it for 21 over there anyway. But respects to the process that's in place, and we'll do the right thing and sit by and wait for the official result to come through.
Now we can make an exclusive announcement. Thank you, Barbaros. John Cara. He's suggesting or saying that next year Geelong could also be hosting another national tournament, the National Masters Tournament. So, goodness me, if that is the case, it's going to be a massive year. There we go. Barbaros says a National Masters Tournament in 2021 in Geelong. Now that would be, look, all jokes aside, that would be absolutely incredible. And I think projects like this, events like this, Josip, certainly gives us hope that, football, that soccer in Geelong can really go up a notch. Go to that next level.
Yeah, when you start putting it in the front of people's minds, not just from a newspaper article or from a newsreel item about some score updates or highlights, but people are actually tangibly involved, volunteering, that's where you turn the fence sitter into a lifetime supporter.
Yeah, absolutely right. I agree.
Now, Steve, were you going to ask a question, or can I jump in?
No, you go, Tonci.
I was going to say, Josip, your opinion. I'd like your opinion here. Michael Cain earlier spoke a lot about the feeling up in Newcastle. Now, you lived up in Newcastle for a while, so you could certainly see that parochialism. And I've been to Newcastle a couple of times during the old National Soccer League days, and I was actually really impressed how very similar to Geelong it felt like. And the people seem to be very, very parochial, very patriotic, for want of a better word, very much like Geelong people are towards Geelong. Is that what you found? And question number 2, did Western United maybe fall in the sense that they didn't engage the local community enough?
Look, on the first part, Newcastle's beautiful. I took my oldest son Carl there a year ago after he finished VCE, just for a father-son getaway. His assessment of it all at the end of it was, I can see now, Dad, why you talk about it so much. You turn on the radio and 7 a.m. news. You think about 7 a.m. news on the radio here on Triple M or something like that, or Bay FM. And they're talking about AFL, and it's ad nauseum. Now, just take that and convert that into football as we know it, and that's what they're talking about on New FM over there. And then you pick up the Newcastle Herald, and all the back pages all about local football, A-League football. You love it, you absolutely love it, But I went there as a person with very minimal amount of knowledge about rugby league and came out what I'd call an armchair expert. I mean, I got involved watching the Newcastle Knights each week, but I'd also go and watch Newcastle Breakers. And the best part about watching Newcastle Breakers, as they were called back then, was Melbourne Knights would come and play up against them, and I'll catch up with all my mates that I used to play with. So it was great. I'd go into town with Silla and Joe Barchuk and the gang, and it was fantastic.
Steve, any questions for Josip?
Yeah. Oh, and I was going to say the similarities would extend to the weather as well, right up there.
Oh, mate, the weather's glorious up there, mate. Yeah, it's a little bit different. That's for sure.
Well, Josip, thank you very much for joining us. We could go on, and we surely will have to get you on again at some time
My
in the
pleasure,
future.
guys.
But it was an absolute pleasure having you on board tonight, and just providing a little bit of an insight into what we've missed out on this year. But hopefully, Geelong will be able to play host to the 46th annual Australian Croatian Soccer Tournament next year.
Thanks for your time, you gentlemen and listeners and viewers. And I look forward to the next conversation.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Josip.
And that was JOSIP ZILIC from North Geelong Warriors. Steve, that was really fascinating conversation with Josip. I have a lot of time for Josip. He really is able to see things from different angles. And I actually really found out a little anecdote about Newcastle, quite an interesting one.
Absolutely right, Tonci. Josip, always a great contributor to the show, whether it's about youth development, which he's very proficient in. Like you say, he picks up things that maybe you or I might not have seen very regularly in that aspect. And then in this case, the cultural differences of two cities of similar populations. He's lived in both, and yeah, it's interesting. Now,
we're going to have a little bit of a break. When we do return, we're going to have Angus Chapman coming on, and that is going to be fantastic. So if you haven't had a chance to go to the toilet, grab yourself a coffee, do so now. We'll be back in about 30 seconds, maybe 45, with Angus Chapman. I know a lot of people are really looking forward to this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Geelong Region Soccer Show. We're here live on Facebook Live, Steve, and actually I can just see. I just noticed it now. Under that jacket of yours, were you wearing is that a Socceroo number 9? Is that like Socceroo's?
It's a 19.
Oh, 19. I thought it was a Mark Viduka top.
I could cover up the one though, and then we'll have the job done. There we go.
There we go, mate. Our next guest is a young kid who's just already achieved a lot. Last year, he did incredible things in his first full year of senior football up at the Geelong Rangers. And now he's plying his trade on the other side of the world. Dreams can come true, can't they, Steve? Who is our next guest?
Absolutely right, Tonci. It's a very warm welcome tonight to the young man, Angus Chapman. And Angus, how does this evening find you?
Yeah, g'day, Tonci, Steve. Thanks for having me on the
Angus.
show.
Thank you very much for joining us, mate.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice. Now, how's life, mate? You've made it back to Australia from the UK temporarily?
Yeah, temporarily. Just got back due, obviously, to coronavirus. It's different, that's for sure. Never experienced anything like it, so I guess being with family during the times is a positive.
Now, did you?
How was it over there, and did you have a safe trip home?
Yeah, safe trip home. It was pretty scary seeing everyone covered up in masks, and saw a couple of people wearing ponchos and stuff just to, as much as possible, get away from it. But yeah, it was a bit weird. But once we got home, I guess things kind of went more normal, I guess.
Now, when you say more normal, when you came back, did you have to do the 14-day quarantine at home?
Yeah, 14 days we didn't leave the house for, which that wasn't fun for sure.
Now, how did you manage 14 days to stay home with your dad, Mike?
Fortunately, it was at work for most of
was
it,
he,
to
so
be
he
fair.
wasn't quarantined?
Yeah, no, he wasn't. But yeah, I guess we just kind of did what we could, play games, puzzles. We tried doing everything, I guess, to pass the time.
But all jokes aside, it must have been absolutely fantastic to be back with family as well after your stint at Barnsley.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, obviously, I'm still meant to be over there if obviously all this hadn't happened, but it's good to be back during this time, obviously, with family back home.
Tell us, how did that all come about? How did the whole Barnsley adventure culminate in you actually ending up staying in the UK and signing for Barnsley? So was it a professional contract or a student contract?
Yeah, so it's a scholarship, so which I'm on for 2 years. Signed obviously when I'm 16, so we'll finish when I'm 18. But it all started back at the Addy Cup last year. I got someone in the crowd watching me, knew someone in Queensland that had an English contact and played a game, and the person went to this Queensland person that had English contact and kind of just went from there. And the English contact got in contact with my dad and asked for footage and videos of me playing, and then went over for a trial at Wolverhampton in July, which then equated to me getting another trial at Barnsley in October and getting accepted, I guess.
So did Barnsley approach you, or was there a player agent or someone that came up and said, Barnsley are also interested in
Yeah, so I've got like a player agent that kind of sorted that out for me. So after Wolves saw me for 3 weeks, they kind of made me like a video footage of me playing, and were like, you deserve to be somewhere in the English setup. Obviously not at Wolves, which was unfortunate, but we moved on. And yeah, he found me a trial at Barnsley, which I went over for 3-4 weeks.
Now, over there in that under 18 setup, which I believe you've been primarily playing in, what's the standard like of those kids? And also, given that you're still not yet 17, if you still got another year to develop in that team?
Yeah. So the quality was quite good. Obviously, you can range from 16-year-olds to 18-year-olds. But I guess what I noticed is a lot of them have been in that academy setup since they're about 8, 9, 10 years old. So they're getting football more regularly than over here, I guess. Which obviously more football equates to you're going to get better. So I did notice that there was a little bit of an increase. Obviously, I played NPL juniors for 5 years at North Geelong, and there was an increase in, I guess, quality, but not overly. So we are kind of in the right track, if that makes sense.
Angus, Barnsley, it's a small town. Like I must admit, I didn't know too much about Barnsley, but doing my research for this interview, I sort of saw that it's only a small town of 91,000 in South Yorkshire or Yorkshire. So basically, it's right in the heart of England, and it's like a real hotbed of football clubs. Leeds United, Sheffield United, Wednesday. They're all around there. But obviously, a small town of 91,000. So not even half the size of Geelong, maybe even more. Yeah, obviously it's got a fanatical football club, and they're in the championship at the moment, not doing the best. They're on the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah.
But tell us a bit about life in Barnsley, and how did you adapt, or otherwise? And did you find any similarities to life here in Geelong, or was it completely different?
Well, I guess the big difference for me was it's the first time I've lived away from home. So I was living with like a host family, which had a couple of the other boys in there as well from different places, a few of them from London, another player from Israel. So I guess I'm in a more football environment, which I hadn't had over here. But yeah, it's a bit different, I'd say. Obviously, colder weather, which isn't great. But once I got used to it, I guess it kind of got used to it, which is good.
Yeah. Now tell us a bit about you as a player. Like, what sort of I know you're an attacker. What sort of forward are you? I know you've scored a couple of goals against Forest, which must have been a real highlight as well.
Yeah. It was always good to score, I guess. Obviously, I hadn't been over there for very long, and I had to get an international clearance passed through, which took a while. Which, I mean, I was training, but I couldn't play, which was a bit frustrating. But once that got through and I got to play games, it was obviously good to score. What kind of striker am I? I guess I used to be a winger, to be fair, when I was at Rangers, and they played two up front. So I guess I'm a hold up player, hold up kind of player. But I'm also pretty quick, so I guess a bit of both.
And tough. I watched a couple of those Rangers games last year, and also had the privilege of commentating a Rangers versus Hoppers Crossing game last year. And Gus, mate, I can tell you, for how old were you then? 16, 17?
15 or 16, I would have been in that season.
Yeah. That was just freakish. It was freakish being able to, pit yourself against grown men. But good on you for that. Mate, is there another Aussie on the books at Barnsley? Is it Kenneth Dougal?
Kenny Dougal, yeah. I haven't had that much of a chance to speak to him, but yeah, he's another Aussie.
He's in the first team, is he?
Yeah, he's in the first team.
Don't know much about him. What sort of a player is he? Where's he from? Brisbane or something like that?
I'm pretty sure he's from Brisbane. He's a holding midfielder. He's a good player. I've seen him play. He's a good player, but obviously he's not getting a go in the first team at the moment. He's usually on the bench. But yeah, he is a very good player.
And you got the chance to play in the under-23s as well in a big derby against Sheffield Wednesday. Tell us a bit about that.
That was that was a hard game. Obviously, when you step up from 18s to 23s, you can get senior players coming in that are getting back to full fitness and stuff like that. So it was a big step up. Played a game against a centre back that had played in Germany and for Scotland and stuff. So it was harder, but I guess it was good to get that experience and get that chance.
Now, Gus, JOSIP ZILIC says he's got a very good question. Gus, what advice would you give a young lad looking for a break? Do you think it takes more technical attributes or physical form fitness to get the attention of the selectors? Thanks, JOSIP. Good question.
I think it's a bit of both, but then I think again as well is attitude. You know, if you go over there and you think, oh, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do this, like I'm the best in the team, obviously they're going to look and go, all right, that's not what we want, which I've seen being over there, that their favourite players are the ones that, you know, pick up the cones after training and do all the hard stuff, as well as being on the pitch as well. But yeah, bit of both. Obviously, strength and aerobic fitness is important, but also technical attributes. But I guess for that break, obviously for mine, it was just me playing in the local Addy Cup. So I guess for any young people that are watching and wanting to get that break, it's about whenever you're playing, whenever you've got a ball at your feet, you're doing your best that you can, because you don't know who's watching. At all times, there could be someone, obviously, if you're at an MPL game, there could be someone in the crowd that happened to me and knows someone that can get you, or stuff like that, I guess. So for anyone that is young and wants to progress, it just be every time you got a ball at your feet, every time you're training, playing, it's just you're putting in 100% every time, and you will get noticed by someone.
Gus, that's a very good point you make about getting noticed, because in this day and age of social media, and I do believe that even we are being now watched from the UK and from, you spin out where your footage of you goes. But this day and age of social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case, it's very, very easy, very, very easy for raw footage to find its way. And having said that, now that you're away from all of that, are you missing it, number one? But number two, what are you doing to keep your skills up, to keep your conditioning up as well?
Yes, of course, missing it. Obviously, been playing football all my life, so I guess when you do get a big break and it is looking to be quite an extended break, it's always going to be hard. But to keep fit, obviously, Barnsley have given us like individual programs, so obviously your gym work, eating right, which is really important. obviously being away from the club usually feeds us. So when you're away from the club, you can have your bad habits start to set in. Easter's just come round, but I guess that's important. And obviously, I've gone for a few runs, going on runs, and going up to Rangers for a few picks with Dad as well, just to keep obviously touch on the balls and on the ball and stuff. So.
Well, if anyone's going to look after you in the healthy eating stakes, it's Mum Kylie, because she's a bit of a fitness fanatic, health fanatic, isn't she? So if anyone's going to look after you, it's going to be her.
Yeah, exactly. Well looked after.
Just out of curiosity, Angus, what's the biggest rival that Barnsley consider to be their sort of arch opponent or enemy?
Chef United or Chef Wednesday are usually the ones that, or especially from when I was over there, our coach definitely didn't want to lose and was going to make us run if we did. But yeah, they're the big. Obviously, I think they're the closest to us. So I guess there's always been a rivalry. They are so close.
Now, Kieran Robinson, he says, big well done, Angus. What's the intensity like in the training over in the UK? Actually, on top of that, Gus, tell us what a normal week or normal week over there would be like, as far as training, as far as conditioning, what you do in your spare time, etc.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously on a Monday you've just played a game on the Saturday. So on a Monday is usually lighter session, which we call ILPs, which is obviously individual. It's like an individual learning program. So you do obviously forwards go with forwards, midfielders with midfielders, defenders with defenders, and you work on your more specific roles to your game. So obviously sometimes our strikers would be doing shooting, first touch, stuff like that, midfielders passing, defenders heading and stuff. Tuesday usually is a more intense session to obviously set us up for the rest of the week, with sometimes players obviously have to play up with the 23s, so we lose a few numbers due to that as well. And then Wednesday is college or their schoolwork, so we have a full day of that on a Wednesday. Thursday, again, we usually do like an 11v11, get used to playing against. Obviously, there's analysis over there, so you watch how other teams play. So usually we try and get an 11v11, and one team plays like how we're going to face up against that other team, and the other team plays like that other team, so we can get used to how they play, if it's direct or if they play out from the back, stuff like that. Friday is usually short session, set pieces, and then analysis to get ready for Saturday.
Wow, it's so methodical, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It does get pretty, I guess, obviously, basically with the ball every day, but if it's what you enjoy doing, then it's awesome.
Lisa Brooks says, Angus, what's the biggest difference you have noticed between football in the UK and your experiences in Australia, in Oz?
The biggest difference is that obviously football over there is way bigger than soccer over here. Every person you talk to supports a team, plays usually, whereas you come over here and it's all about AFL. All the money's invested in AFL, which, okay, yes, it's a great sport, but football, our football, as I like to say, is it's worldwide and everyone plays it. So I think the biggest difference is that it's more talked about and played over there than it is over here.
Now, as we're watching, we're just watching some footage there as well of you. There's one of you with the top and the. There's another one where you're riding a tackle there, and one thing, the Barnsley Stadium, it just looks so quaint. It looks like it's got grandstands on all four sides, but it just looks like a real. What's the capacity of the ground over there?
I'm pretty sure it's 21,000, 22,000, possibly around that mark.
Is that something that you'd like to see in Australian football? A lot more of those. What would it be? I guess a bit like Amy Park, maybe thereabouts, or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously that would help having. having more stadiums, more places to play. That's another thing we noticed as well since being over there. There's so many more parks and soccer fields than there is over here. Like you drive past and it might be like a little local park, but it's got like a cage football kind of thing, if that makes sense. So there is more chances for young kids to go for a kick with their mates because it's a 5-minute walk down the road. Whereas obviously over here, there's not that many. There's obviously the soccer grounds, but other than that, that's about it.
Now, we've also seen on screen at the moment, you got yourself in the match day program. So there's a get to know Angus Chapman and an academy interview with Angus Chapman. What was it like after that? Were you walking down the streets of Barnsley and you'd get people coming up to you and say, "Oh, we saw you."
Yeah.
What is it like, for a young kid over there, going over there wide-eyed and, and all of that kind of stuff? Is it sometimes a little bit hard to keep your feet on the ground, or do they at the club make sure that you keep your feet well and truly on the ground?
Yeah, I guess obviously when you see stuff like that, obviously I was in the program, I was like excited, I was buzzing about it. But I guess obviously I'm not there yet. I'm not playing first team week in, week out. So I guess me, that's the end goal. That is when I know that I have officially got there. So I guess I got to keep my head down and keep working towards that stage.
And what's your living arrangements like over there? Have they made it so it's nice and comfortable for you? Have you got like a family that looks after you, or how does it all work?
Yeah, so obviously because I've got no family over there. Well, I do have family, but close enough to stay with. So we stay with like a host family kind of, with a couple of the other boys that live further away. So we had a few from London. As I said before, there's one from Israel. So most of us live in a house together, 4 or 5, and then there's another house that has 1 or 2, and then the rest are usually a couple live in Leeds, which is 40 minutes up the road, and the rest live in Barnsley. So it's a bit different living with obviously someone that's not your family. But yeah, so during the week stay at the host family, and then on the weekends I have family in Leeds, so I go and stay with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gus, we've got Maxi Santich from Melbourne saying, excellent insight in what you'll be doing here with upcoming young players. Thank you, Maxi. On a final note, we could talk with you for ages, and hopefully next time we chat to you, we'll be chatting to you you'll be from England, and we'll be in Geelong.
Hopefully.
It would be fantastic. But, mate, a parting word for young players here in Geelong that either have played with you, played against you, are watching this interview now on Facebook Live and thinking, wow, I want to be like him. What words of inspiration, what words of advice would you give to the thousands of youngsters playing soccer football around Geelong at the moment? Or not at the moment?
Yeah, what would I say? Probably just keep working hard, obviously. As I said before, you never know who is watching. So every time you have the ball at your feet, every training session, every game, you're putting in 100%. And then obviously, if you don't get noticed, it's not the end of the world. You can still play high levels over here. Playing NPL, it's still a massive achievement, especially in the senior setup. So I guess you just always got to keep working hard, and you'll get that chance eventually. Whether it comes when you're younger, a bit older, it'll come. You'll get that chance to, I guess, take that next step and go up a level if you're playing local up to NPL or NPL up to A-League or across overseas like I did. So you will get that chance if you keep pursuing it and working hard. But, yeah.
Stephen, your last questions?
Oh, there's just one question from Paul Green. It says, what's with the tash, Gus?
Right. I guess in ISO, no need to shave it. No, not many people are seeing it, so I guess I'll keep it.
And your dad says, well done, lads. Super proud of you, no doubt. Mike and Kylie aren't the only ones proud of you, mate. I can tell, everyone up at the Rangers and the whole football fraternity here in Geelong are super proud to see what you've achieved and what you're going to achieve. And look, if Barnsley get relegated to English League One, probably a lot of the players will move on, and there'll be a big opening there. So who knows? Who knows where it could lead to? Hey, Gus.
Yeah, exactly. I guess obviously it's not great for the club if we do go down, but it does give us younger players maybe a better chance to get further up into the 23s, up until first team. So, yeah.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing a lot more of you and reading a lot more about you, and wish you all the very, very best on your return, hopefully sooner rather than later. But thank you very much, mate, for joining us here tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Geelong Region Soccer Show.
Thanks for having me, Tonci and Stephen. We'll keep in contact and hope this show goes well and keeps doing well. Thank you. Thanks to viewers, everything. Cheers.
And, that was Angus Chapman. Steve, what a great interview that was, hey?
Yeah, you wouldn't think he was still only a 16-year-old. He's a very, very well-spoken young lad, and yeah, we look forward to seeing him go on to even greater things over there at Barnsley, Tonci. Imagine going over there, maybe us going over there and watching him play a game one day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic, and look, and you know what? It's incredible when you see it's a local kid that has done so well. And, we are blessed. We really, really are blessed when you see, the JOSIP Zilics, the Joey Didlitzes, the Steve Horvaths, the Matthew Sporanovics, Angus Chapman hopefully will follow in their footsteps and get to the Socceroo level one day. But it's great to see Laura Sporanovic's another one that comes to mind as well of the girls. So there's some great talent, always has been the case. And we certainly look forward to that coming to the fore, and it's going to be a big year next year, and hopefully the rest of this year is also going to be quite big. But mate, next week's going to be a massive show. We're just working on our final guests for that, but stay tuned for that. It's going to be another big show, and look, the next few weeks, depending obviously on what happens tomorrow with the FFA, if anything does happen, but the next few weeks are going to be absolutely massive.
They are, Tonci, they are. And have we got a teaser for this Thursday's football out west?
Oh, this Thursday.
Or is it too early to call?
Oh, it's a bit too early to call, but it is a specially themed Caroline Springs George Cross show. We're going to have the President Mark Sultana on, who's very, very a very colourful, he's got strong opinions. But we're going to have also their technical director George Gero on, who some people will know him. He was involved in the technical department at Football Victoria for many years, and one of the most highly rated technical football administrators, if you like, in the state. So that'll be really interesting to see. And I know Craig Filer is still working on a few biggies for this show, but there's also, we'll probably be making an announcement on Thursday night, so that's 7 p.m. on the Football Out West News Facebook page. We'll be making a major announcement regarding next week's show. Another golden generation Socceroo member will be joining us on that show, so it should be huge. But Steve, what's on the cards for the rest of the week, mate?
Well, tonight we're just going to go and get on the MyFootball on YouTube and watch that match, that classic from Upton Park, England and Australia from 2000. And it's going to be great.
Started at 7:30, so we better get off here, and hopefully then we'll be able to tune into that and watch that. So thanks very much for...
That's right, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Tonci, and thanks to John Aaron for getting on board tonight with us, and special cheerio tonight to Santino Mamone as well.
Absolutely. Big cheerio to Santino. And on behalf of Steve and myself, a very, very good night to you all. Thank you for tuning in. And here is one last word from tonight's advertiser.
Hi, my name is John Aaron. I'm the State Member for Lara, which covers the north of Geelong. As your elected representative, I want you to know that the Andrews government is a huge supporter of the world game, both at state level but also at local level. I also want you to know I am here and willing to listen to any concerns you may have about our beautiful part of the world, which, by the way, has produced some brilliant players that have gone on to international stardom. Geelong is the hometown of ex-Socceroo Steve Horvath, JOSIP ZILIC, Chris Trajanowski, as well as the ex-Croatian international Joey Didlitzes and current Socceroo Matty Sporanovic. My office can be contacted on 52753898 or via email at john.erin@parliament.vic.gov.au or follow me on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter.
The above message was funded from the parliamentary budget.